Why are we always so hungry and thirsty, never able to be fully satisfied? Come on, you know how it goes. We're in Exodus. God brings his people out of Egypt, and the first thing they do after they watch the armies of the Egyptians get closed in on the Red Sea is begin to complain. And what are they complaining about? They're hungry. They're hungry. Their lives were just saved. Can you imagine the adrenaline? And then immediately, what are they wanting? Well, they're realizing that they're hungry. I don't know that I've ever been so frustrated with the phrase, I'm hungry, than I am at this point in my life. I have 2 children, an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I hear that all day long. I'm hungry. They don't even know what it means to be hungry. So I'm reading Exodus 16, and all of a sudden I'm picking up on the complaining of the people because they're hungry. And you see, I'm not really frustrated with my kids. I'm frustrated that I have to be inconvenienced by them to help satisfy their hunger. And the reality is that I'm just as hungry, but I'm not really hungry because I don't really know hunger. But as an adult, I just satisfy my hunger with whatever I want, whenever I want to, especially in the freedoms that I have in this country. I have never, in my adult life, not had food in my refrigerator. And yet, I satisfy a hunger and a thirst that I know I have in ways that never seem to fully, completely satisfy. And there's something that happens a little bit deeper between God and his people. See, it's almost as if God is allowing their daily hunger of food to lead them to a place of him preparing a way for a deeper hunger so that we might find satisfaction in him. And I think you know the hunger that I'm talking about is the spiritual hunger. The spiritual hunger and thirst where we see Jesus while he's in the wilderness dealing with the temptation of Satan, offering him food. And he says, man does not live on bread alone, but from every word out of the mouth of God. While I know and I satisfy a physical hunger through physical means, whether through food or the purchase of something or a wanton desire of something new or even intimately with my wife, that I know there still at the same time is a consistent hunger and thirst that's very much deeper and not ever able to be satisfied in the material ways in which I normally satisfy my physical hunger and thirst. And yet there's a component to it where if you consider and wonder, like, why doesn't God just give us all that we need from him for the rest of our life here? Like, why is it that the people have to collect the manna every day? I think that's the real question I'm asking in this Devo. Why did God make the people who were complaining about being hungry? He wasn't mad at them for complaining about being hungry. In fact, he says over and over again, I've heard your complaint, that you're complaining that you're hungry, and so I'll give you quail at night and manna in the morning. And then he instructs them, instead of like providing for them food and saying it's going to be here every day, he says, it'll be here for you 6 days out of 7. Every morning you have to go and collect it. And don't try to get more one day for the next day. You'll have to depend upon me for each day except for the one on the 6th where you'll have the ability to collect double so that you can rest on the 7th. Like, what is really going on here? And then I found this analogy that I don't even know who is to credit it, but I'm going to share it with you. So the story is of a king who dispersed his provision to his prince on a yearly basis. And so once a year, the prince would come to the king and receive provision for an entire year. But at some point, the king realized he only saw his son once a year when the provision was being received. And so the king, instead of giving all of a year's wages, or all of a year's inheritance or overflow from the storehouses of the kingdom, instead began to disperse provision on a daily basis. And instead of seeing his son once a year, he saw his son every day. And it's in that every day that he got to know more, talk with more, be with more, his son. If God is the one that created a spiritual need of hunger and thirst in you, then hear me today, that the reason that today's manna is not good enough for tomorrow is not because he's playing some tricks on you. It's because a loving father desires closeness and consistency with his sons and his daughters. So be hungry and be thirsty and be satisfied. But don't try to fill up so much today that you don't need to eat or drink tomorrow. Get all that you can today. Get all that God has for you today. But not because you're worried about there not being enough tomorrow. You're still hungry and thirsty by design, by God's design. That's a crazy thought, huh? That God's okay with me being hungry and thirsty. That God made me to be dependent upon consistent spiritual nourishment.